Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. If you guys want to go ahead and start making your way to your seats, the food will be out here momentarily. It is on its way into the building as we speak. If you guys want to grab your seats, we'll get started here shortly. Thank you so much. Bye. Good afternoon. If we can all take our seats, we're looking forward to getting started today. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm really excited to have the team from the Texas Tribune supporting our event today, to have so many locals in the room speaking to the decisions being made at the Capitol. Very excited to recognize all of the supporters of our organization as well. I'm Andrea Kosar. I serve as the general manager of the Waco Bridge, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to our very first public event. Thank you so much for spending your lunch with us. Speaking of which, your lunch will be out to your table momentarily. We have volunteers working to get all of those boxed lunches out to you. Now, the Waco Bridge is a new nonprofit, nonpartisan local newsroom created by and for Wacoans to connect our community with trusted, useful, and local information, always free and accessible. We're striving to help you learn more about your neighborhoods, your schools, and your everyday lives. The Bridge was formed through years of community research and discovery led by the Waco Foundation and the American Journalism Project, with input from hundreds of residents and local partners. Our mission is to be a trusted connector digitally through our newsletters, website, and social media. And we also want to connect with the community in person through events like this one. We really want to open the conversation for our community to be heard. We are really proud to be supported by the Texas Tribune, and we have a lot of folks from the Texas Tribune here. If you want to wave your hands up in the air. They have been a strong advocate supporting local newsrooms like ours and offering behind-the-scenes resources, things like finance, HR, and technology. But make no mistake, this newsroom is fully locally, editorially independent, and accountable to Waco and Wacoans. This event reflects exactly what we're here to do, which is invite community conversations that matter. While we won't focus on state or national politics, we knew it was important to look at how recent decisions made 100 miles away in Austin are affecting us right here in Waco. So today, we are actually going to hear directly from leaders who represent our region. We're especially grateful to our founding funders, Cooper Foundation, Rappaport Foundation, and Waco Foundation, who understand each of these incredible organizations understands that access to local news is essential to building a stronger and more connected Waco. And for today's event, we'd like to thank our sponsors as well, McLennan Community College, Heart of Texas Goodwill Industries, Texas State Technical College, and First Title Company of Waco. Now, before we jump in, I want to ask the Waco Bridge staff if you'll stand up and we can recognize each staff member in the room. These are the journalists and staff members who are already hard at work listening, reporting, and building something new with our community. We have our editor-in-chief, J.B. Smith, our community engagement and events manager, Dominic Villa, right over here, hard at work, getting everybody fed right now. Wow. Our education reporter, Raquel Villatoro, right over here. Our government and growth reporter, Sam Shaw. And if we can give a brand new welcome to our photojournalist, Justin Hamill, who's surprising us with his visit today. Justin is officially getting started in early July, but he thought it was important to join our community. So if you guys want to connect with each of our editorial team members and our Waco Bridge team members afterward, we would love to hear from you and hear your feedback and what you would like reported on. So thank you guys so much. I also want to recognize each of our advisory committee members. Now, if you guys could stand, please. Thank you guys so much. And if y'all will wave your hands in the air. Those serving on our advisory committee actually kicked off with our launch committee, helping with the hiring, with the vision, and with so much more for the Waco Bridge. They're speaking into the Waco Bridge and making sure that local voices are heard through our organization. Very grateful to all of you guys. Thank you so much. Now, it is my pleasure to invite Dr. Johnette McCown, president of McLennan Community College, to the stage. Thank you so much for being a founding supporter of the Waco Bridge and our sponsor. Dr. McCown has long been a champion for education and civic engagement, and we're incredibly grateful to her and her team for graciously hosting today's event and for supporting the kinds of conversations that we're going to be having today. Thank you so much.
Well, hello everyone and welcome. We are so glad you're here on our campus. And thank you for all of your support for our students and for the community. I want to give two quick shout outs. First to Beth Wooten and her team from TSTC. Will you help me welcome them? And also to Congressman Curry. He's been an amazing asset to all of us, and so I want to give him a thank you. TSTC is unlike us in being a state agency. So that's why we are very different in many ways. They do amazing work, and we do separate work for most of the time. We are one of the 50 community colleges in Texas. We are a political subdivision, so sometimes like a city and sometimes like a school district. But in the 88th legislative session, we have House Bill 8, which changed everything for us. We became a little bit more like TSTC in being outcome-based. And so we've moved from a system where we got paid for enrollment to now we're getting paid for outcomes. And there are tiers that are based on the outcomes. If students go through dual credit and get at least 15 hours. If they leave the high school with less than 15, we don't have any funding credit. We used to be paid for enrollment, now we're not. And another thing is if they would transfer successfully to a public institution. So I'm going to mention a few changes, and also if they earn credentials of value. Just getting a credential that doesn't translate into a living wage, we're not paid for that. So I want to just go through a few things. So the big thing this time, and thank you, Congressman, for helping support that, was the general appropriations. And you can see for all of the community colleges, it was $2.4 billion. The second thing, and the reason I mentioned that it's outcome-based, was House Bill 500, and that was a supplemental appropriation. The state estimated how much money we would earn, and they were low. We earned more. So without this supplemental appropriation, we wouldn't have gotten the extra $1.1 million. So that was important to us. And then the Senate Bill 1786, I talked about that we got credit for public institutions. Students that transferred to Baylor, we didn't get anything. So that's about $3,500 a student. They never existed in our program. So then the next that you may hear a little bit about, still kind of controversial, and that's Senate Bill 2615. That added restrictions on remote work. So we have some employees that are just not faculty that have been working from home a couple of days a week. We have taken a pause on that to make sure we're in compliance with Senate Bill 2615. So they just heard about that yesterday. Not everybody's thrilled. You know, they've gotten accustomed to getting to work from home a little bit. And then we had the TEOG grant, and this is funding that helps lower income students. And then the financial aid for swift transfer. If you don't know, that is in our public schools, and thank you, WISD, and our other partners, to where we teach in the schools. Sometimes they come to campus, but if they're on free and reduced lunch, they don't pay anything on tuition fees or books. So that's very important. So we have some students that even come out of high school with a degree, and they've already completed 2 years free. And then we have some, they get a reduced rate if they don't qualify for that. And it's not unusual. I see many students from places that just are only here 1 year. So it's really been a boon for families. And then the other one, and I'll just mention because, again, we're figuring it out, is Senate Bill 37. And that gives me more authority over faculty senate or faculty council. It gives the board a lot more authority on curriculum and many things. And that would be something I'm guessing Beth's looking at too. Because that covers a lot of things about how things are offered. Those are a few of the things that we were watching, mainly funding, making sure we're supporting the economic goals of our community and also for our state. So thank you for being here today, and let's hear from the important speakers.
Thank you again to MCC and to all of our partners who made today possible. Now, to help us kick off today's conversation, I am honored to welcome to the stage Matthew Watkins, Texas Tribune's editor-in-chief. Now, Matthew and his team are committed to helping Texans understand how decisions made at the Capitol shape the lives of folks all across Texas. He's also played a key role in helping the Waco Bridge come to life. And today, he will walk us through the key takeaways of the most recent legislative session. Please join me in welcoming Matthew Watkins.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Andrea, and thank you all for being here. I am Matthew Watkins, editor-in-chief of the Texas Tribune, and we at the Tribune are very excited to be having the Waco Bridge join us as a sibling newsroom, right? We are organizations that share the same values, the same idea that people need to have fair and honest and intelligent and accurate information about what's going on in their communities. While the Waco Bridge is laser focused on Waco, the Tribune is laser focused on the idea of state government and how important it is in people's lives, right? It's just making decisions about what happens in your schools, on the roads you drive on, the health care you receive, and so much more. And we're devoted to telling the story of what's happening in that state government and the impact it will have on your lives. And of course, we just wrapped up a legislative session where a lot of major and important decisions were made about those futures and those different things that touch people's lives. And my goal here is I'm going to give you guys a brief kind of explanation of some of those high points, some of the most important things that happen in this legislative session as we kind of move forward into a conversation about what that will mean for Waco in particular. And of course, one of the big things is we're not done yet, right? And so, I learned a valuable lesson, which is don't prepare your PowerPoint slides too far in advance, because late Sunday night, our governor announced that there will be a special session, in large part built around a veto of a major bill that was passed this session. That bill, as folks may know, was related to the substance THC, essentially the substance that is in marijuana that gets you high, but that can also be in other products beyond what is currently banned in the state from marijuana. A few years ago, the legislature legalized hemp in this state in an effort to help particularly the agriculture industries in this state, give them another cash crop in which they were to develop. An unintended consequence of this was a situation where a lot of substances that contained the THC substance were being sold in gas stations and other kind of shops all across the state. These substances could get you high, but they were essentially being unregulated. This legislative session, Dan Patrick in particular, led a charge to ban those substances, ban them completely. When the House heard that when that bill made it over to the House after passing the Senate, the legislature the House, for a brief period of time, considered sort of not doing quite an outright ban, but in fact maybe more just regulating that substance instead. But after various negotiations and a vote in the House, they ended up going forward with a straight ban. That would mean that a lot of the shops that you've seen sprout up in Waco and big cities, small cities across the state would have to close and stop selling those substances. But there was a very big push to veto that bill, to fight that bill, and Sunday night, about 45 minutes before the veto deadline, Governor Greg Abbott did issue that veto. So the bill, it was SB 3 that would have banned the sale of those substances, will not go into law. But what Governor Abbott did was release a very long statement saying, he had concerns about whether this SB 3 would align with federal regulations, whether it would hold up in court over lawsuits. And he suggested instead saying that lawmakers should, instead of just completely banning the substances, they should increase the regulations in significant ways, make it so that people under 18 or 21 would not be able to buy them, require labeling on them, and all different kinds of different restrictions that would still allow the sale in some cases, still allow this $8 billion industry that has sprouted up, but make it safer, make it less of a sort of Wild West type situation. So the legislature will be coming back. They will be meeting on July 21st to consider this bill and several others that Abbott vetoed, with the goal of maybe saying, why don't y'all make some tweaks and make these more acceptable to me? And that will happen. They have 30 days to meet. One of the big questions when they meet is, will they take up another big issue, which is a midterm redistricting that has been asked for by President Trump. It's been reported by the Tribune and other outlets that President Trump, in part out of a concern Usually in midterm elections, the party that is not represented in the White House often makes big gains. I think there are concerns about whether Republicans can hold on to the U.S. House. And President Trump has reportedly requested that Texas consider this redistricting to redraw the congressional lines in particular to allow for more Republicans to come out of the Texas delegation, which would then allow the Texas House, possibly allow Republicans to hold on to the U.S. House. This is a very controversial issue, not just across the broad spectrum, but within the Republican Party itself. You may remember we last did redistricting after the 2020 census, and Republicans made a specific decision during that time not to try to draw the lines in a way that grew their majority, but instead to entrench and protect the majorities that they have in place. You did not see a massive increase in the number of Republican representatives in all the different bodies that they drew. Instead, they protected those incumbents in different ways. And if you were to redraw those congressional lines, it would carry a risk with it, right? You would have to ask yourself, later down the decade, is there a chance that some of those seats that you redraw, in order to create new Republican seats, you need to move Republican voters from Republican districts into districts that are currently held by Democrats. That makes those Republicans more vulnerable. And so there are big questions about whether this will happen. We will likely find out in the next month or so whether Texas will go through this process and people will be amenable to it. But it's an interesting thing to watch as we move on. But that being said, they're not done. They did accomplish a whole lot already, and let's go through some of those topics right now. One of the biggest topics this legislative session was education. The legislature approved $8.5 billion of new funding for Texas public schools. This came after a pretty painful legislative session for schools last legislative session. A lot of schools had to cut programs or implement deficit budgets. This is an effort to kind of get schools back in a better financial shape. But it wasn't just a blank $8.5 billion check. There were a lot of restrictions, a lot of things that were set in place when this was passed. One of the biggest ones, $4 billion for teacher raises. Teachers will be getting raises as long as they have more than about 2 or 3 years experience, getting raises ranging from around $2,500 to as much as $10,000, depending on factors of how experienced they are and what kind of school districts. More money will be going to teachers in rural districts, places where it's harder to get teachers to fill open jobs will be getting larger raises. More experienced teachers will get raises as well. They've also beefed up the teacher incentive pay program. The legislature has created a system in recent years where teachers can make as much as $100,000 in some cases if they are really performing well, the students in their classrooms are doing well. They put more money into that program to try to create, beef up those incentive programs. They also created a new requirement that teachers be certified when they're hired in the coming years. This has been an issue in recent years. The legislature loosened some of those restrictions, and the majority of new hires in Texas had been uncertified teachers. That has an impact on the ability of basically there's data that shows that uncertified teachers often don't perform as well in the classroom. The legislature is trying to correct this and impose new rules and also new funding that will incentivize teachers to get taught. And then they implemented new math and reading screeners to assess progress for K through 3 students, a real big push on literacy, trying to make sure students are getting the kind of base education that they need in order to succeed later in their careers. And then, of course, there is the school voucher education savings account issue. This has been a dominant political issue in recent years. It has failed repeatedly in the legislative session in past sessions. This year it actually passed, in part due to a lot of politicking that Governor Greg Abbott did, making this one of his kind of signature issues. Students will be able to access education savings accounts worth around $10,000 to send their students to private school to cover tuition at private school or to cover homeschooling expenses. There's also money in this to allow you can get a little bit more money if you have a special needs child or things like that. This will be in effect starting in the 2026-27 school year. There's $1 billion that have been appropriated for this program. Once that $1 billion cap is reached, there will be no more vouchers available that year. The comptroller will run this issue. A lot of the rules of how it works and how people can access this will still are still to be determined based on, well, one thing, who the comptroller is, because the comptroller has just left to become the chancellor of Texas A&M University System. But we will find out more about that later. They are prioritizing for students who make under 500% of the poverty level. That runs, I don't have the exact number in front of me, it's a little bit over $110,000. They're trying to aim to prioritize low-income and middle-income students for this program. Participating students won't have to take the STAR test in order for this to happen. This is a major change, right, in policy, and something that many Republicans in the state have been asking for years. It will finally happen this time around. There will be a lot to watch. What will they do if the demand outpaces supply? What will they do? What will the impact be on student learning? How will this choice that is given to parents affect, the education that students receive? It's something that we're going to want to watch in the coming years. Other key education measures. Classrooms will be required to hang the 10 Commandments on their walls. DEI initiatives at the K through 12 level will be banned. They'll be required, I already mentioned the certification, cell phones banned in public schools, and they have pulled some restrictions on the disciplinary rules in classrooms. A few years ago, lawmakers made it imposed new restrictions on when and how students can be suspended, particularly homeless students and other folks like that. They have since pulled back on some of these rules after there have been concerns raised by teachers about, trouble having a hard time post-COVID in implementing discipline and order in their classrooms. Another big one, water. Texas, it's no secret, faces a bit of a water crisis down the line. One estimate has been that the state needs to spend $154 billion over the next 50 years in order to meet its water needs as the state continues to grow. The lawmakers took a very big first step in trying to meet those needs, including appropriating $2.5 billion into a state water fund that can be used both to create new supply and also to bring about conservation that would, reduce individual per capita water use in the state as well. In addition to that, in November, lawmakers will vote, Texans will vote on whether to approve a constitutional amendment that would automatically add $1 billion to that state fund every year for the next 20 years. So what you're really talking about is a potential $22.5 billion commitment to water over the next 20 years. That is subject to voter approval in November, but I think there's a very good chance that that will pass. We also have the grid. We all remember 2021 when the grid collapsed. The state has taken measures to try to prevent that from happening again, including creating the Texas Energy Fund last legislative session. But since that happened, there was a report predicting that energy demand in Texas would more than double in the coming years, in part because of the state's growth, but maybe even more so because of changes in the economy, things like AI data centers, Bitcoin mining, and things like that are coming online and demand a whole lot of energy. That got state leaders' attention, and they did some things to address that, including adding $5 billion more to the state energy fund, which incentivizes the creation of new power plants in the state, particularly natural gas. They implemented new rules in which those big, large load users can be told by the grid that they have to shut down in power emergencies. And a big thing that they didn't do was create new rules and restrictions on renewable energy resources. Even though that was something that was talked about during the session, they decided to go with a more broad, any kind of energy is needed and necessary approach for supporting the grid. Another big one, property tax cuts, a very unpopular property tax. Always unpopular in the state. Lawmakers, whenever they have extra money in recent years, they have wanted to devote a big chunk of that to reducing property taxes. Among the big things they did was increase the homestead exemption from $100,000 to $140,000. That'll save the average homeowner around $490 annually on their tax bill. They also raised the senior exemption a little bit more on that, so seniors will get even more savings, I believe, over 65. Since 2009, the state legislature has implemented a series of kind of escalating property tax cuts. The total spent in this year's budget on those tax cuts is $51 billion that they will spend in this recently approved budget to support those cuts. That's more than the state will spend on all the state universities in the state next year. It's a major investment in property tax cuts in response to what Republican lawmakers have been hearing about frustrations over growing property taxes. Housing is another big one, right? I mean, I know this is an issue in the big cities. It's also an issue in cities like Waco, where people are moving and growth is happening. The legislature has taken a sort of reduced regulations approach to addressing these issues. They created new rules that allow new developments to be built on smaller lots, right? Many cities have these minimum lot sizes. The state has now implemented for new developments a smaller minimum lot size that all cities have to comply with. They also have done some things where they've made it a little bit harder, not a lot harder, but a little bit harder for neighbors to block various housing developments and other things that happen. One kind of rule that's in place is if a new development is popping up that requires a zoning change, if 20% of nearby neighbors object to it, then in order for the change to happen, there has to be a supermajority of support from the city council in order for that zoning change to happen. People say that makes it harder to build new housing, which drives the prices up. They've loosened some of those rules to make it a little bit easier as well. And they've also changed building codes in some ways too. An interesting little quirk in state laws, apartment buildings have to have 2 separate stairwells, which means you can only really build bigger apartment buildings in the state. They call it like the Texas donut is the model. They have changed that now, and you can now build single stairwell apartment buildings, and those different ideas of like, if we have less rules, fewer restrictions, you're going to be able to incentivize people to build more housing, which will drive down the cost of housing going forward. So that is a quick rundown of some of the big topics. We would love, if you're interested in learning more about this, if you're interested in following the legislative session, I would encourage you to visit texastribune.org/newsletters. You see right here, that is the brief is our main one. You can get it every day. It's a daily rundown of everything that's happening in state government, state policy, and politics each day across the state of Texas. We also have individual newsletters related to various topics, education, energy, you name it, any of those different types of things. And so, the Tribune, we really believe that you need to know in order for the democracy to function. You need to hear, you need to understand what's happening in this state, why it's happening, and what's being done in your name. And so we encourage you to read the Tribune, read the Bridge, and find out more, and follow along. And that is it for me. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for grounding us in what's happened and why it matters to us here in Waco. Next, I'm excited to introduce J.B. Smith, our editor-in-chief at the Waco Bridge, who will be moderating today's conversations. Many of you know him from his decades-long career of reporting on local government and community life here in Waco. He'll be in conversation with State Representative Pat Curry, who represents District 56, to talk about his work at the Capitol and how he sees it affecting our region. Representative Curry was elected in November 2024, filling the seat left by Representative Doc Anderson. Curry is a Waco native, Texas A&M graduate, and a longtime entrepreneur, farmer, and rancher. Today, you'll hear directly from him about how issues affecting our community are being addressed at the Capitol and what that means for life here in Waco. Now, we will have a Q&A at the end of our program today that includes all of our panelists. Each of you can see a QR code on your table. You can go ahead and scan those QR codes as questions pop up, and they will come to our team in live time. If you have any issues with the Q&A portal or technology at all, we also have cards on the table that you can fill out with a pen, and we'll have a portion of Q&A at the end. And if during that Q&A portion you want to flag one of the volunteers and put your note card in the air, someone will be around to collect those questions from you. We want to get as many questions today as possible. And out of respect for all of your fellow attendees, please refrain from any disruptions to our conversations when we have folks on stage. We definitely want to have a chance for everyone to have questions at the end and for everyone to have their voice be heard. So we will have that Q&A portion coming up. Now, right now, if you guys would please join me in welcoming, wow, I need some of the lunch from Cane's. If you will please join me in welcoming Representative Pat Curry and J.B. Smith. Thank you so much.
Pat, welcome to our first event for the Waco Bridge. We're thrilled to have you and learn more about the journey toward your journey and your first year in the legislature. So I wonder what that was like. Was there a lot of hazing for a freshman legislator?
Well, I was the first freshman to get a bill on the floor, and it is a tradition that they haze the freshmen on their first bill. And they tried to haze me, and being the first one, we didn't know what to expect. So it was fun. We had a good time. I was asked the question, do I like Thai food? And I said yes. And they said, well, what is your favorite curry? And I said, my wife, who's sitting right up here above me.
Good answer.
So that kind of shut them down after that. But it was a lot of fun for that reason.
That's great. Well, I have to admit, a confession here. I mean, I've been in the local news business for decades, and I've been hyper-focused on that. And I've tried to follow state news kind of like a dog follows a car, but I really chases a car. But I've realized as we're getting in this position how important these state decisions are for local news. And so I hope we could talk about a little bit about that. When you look at legislation that was passed in this year's session, what are a few that really made a difference for Waco specifically?
Yeah, I think, I got into this race because of water. That was a big deal to me, to protect the water. I was born and raised here. I lived through the nightmare of the mid-'90s. Had a lot of discussion with our local leaders, and I'm going to pause for just a second there to say that one beauty of McLennan County and HD 56 especially is that we really have a great, almost Unitarian government. And you'll see in a little while when everybody's up here, Judge Scott Felton, Mayor Jim Holmes, part of that, and Mayor Dylan Meek. I see that Mayor Kyle Deaver's here as well, several city councilmen, Dr. Tiffany Spicer. We all work together and we don't always agree on things, on everything, but we do work together and talk to each other and communicate extremely well to try to carry the McLennan County message forward, all right, and move the needle for here. And so I got in to move the needle, and I would say the very first one would have been water, and then the other one, of course, mental health.
So with the water issue, you filed 3830, which would have incentivized dairy farmers in the North Bosque watershed to haul their manure out of the watershed so it doesn't get into our lake. And this was a rare example of the city of Waco and the dairy industry upstream actually saying, yes, we want to do this. And it seemed to be a pretty promising bill. Was it disappointing that it didn't make it to the floor?
It was very disappointing. I mean, yes, you're correct about it being a more cooperative effort, because we had the city, we had the dairy farmers, we had the county, we had the Farm Bureau. All of us were on the same page to say, you know what, if we can help the dairy farmers grow, but do it in such a way that where we can protect our water, which we'll do that to the death. I mean, that's the one thing we will protect all the way.
Are those conversations ongoing between the industry and the city and you?
Yes, absolutely. And they got better. I mean, we immediately after the primary, actually, we started having some meetings with them and started working with them. Ran into a little roadblock for a little bit towards late summer. Got through that and then started working together a whole lot better. And then, and so I think what you're going to see moving forward is all of us working together to come up with long-term solutions to that problem that the legislature doesn't necessarily have to be involved in. But if we can help, we're going to step in and help.
You mentioned mental health. Tell us what was accomplished for Waco in particular in this session.
Yeah, so when I had my initial discussion with the speaker, every representative gets to do that, and you get to tell them what your priorities are and so on and so forth. And he said, what's your number one priority? And I said, mental health. And he looked at me and goes, well, that is not a big Republican issue. And I said, no, sure, it may not be, but I know one thing, that it's a big issue where I live. And, we lost our mental health facility in DePaul. We did not get the funding that we needed to allow our diversion center to run 24/7. We really don't have, other than all the great work that the schools do, we don't really have a great program for children in mental health here. And so that became a priority. My hope was to get a new facility built. Learned a lot, found out that was not going to happen. We had a plan B. The plan B was to get more funding for the Behavioral Health Network and for the county itself to be able, because the jail right now is our mental health facility, which is sad. And so we were able to get some extended funding. We get $6.5 million a year now for the next 2 years, which will allow us to go to 24/7. I'm actively involved with the behavioral health leadership team, several of whom are here, and we're going to also have a study to be prepared, and hopefully we can be prepared for next session to be able to go back and show where we used it, what the results were, and then hopefully be able to try to begin the process to build a facility, a real facility in Waco to support the mental health needs of this entire area.
So just to background that, the Behavioral Health, Heart of Texas Behavioral Health Network, formerly MHMR, has created a diversion center for mental health crisis, but this allows them to go 24/7.
Correct. I mean, unfortunately, the way it was structured and when the money came and how it came, it was structured where basically they were 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and it just wasn't. It couldn't be effective with the funding that they had, and now I think with the whole team involved and all of us working very closely together, we're definitely going to be able to accomplish a lot more than we have with the money that we have.
I know that the closure of the DePaul Center a couple years ago was a huge blow as a psychiatric hospital. How likely is it that we'll get something to replace that, and how large could it be? How many beds would you be looking at, or do you know?
Well, possibilities in the legislature are difficult. Our whole Constitution and our legislature is designed to kill bills, not allow them to pass. And so consequently, you have to really navigate a system to do it. I'm proud to say I got 10 bills through to the governor. I got some pretty important legislation, and I got some things through the appropriations process, including this particular deal, $10 million for the Texas Rangers and the DPS offices here. So some pretty cool stuff that way, but it is difficult. And so I hope we'll be able to do it. I can, and we're going to work really hard to do it. Sometimes that can take 2 or 3 sessions. I will warn everybody, and it doesn't matter what party you're in or where you stand, we all have to pitch in on this. And we all have to raise local money and be able to get the matching state money and do the things necessary to be able to operate a mental health facility here. We cannot think that the state's just going to come in and poof and do this for us. It's not going to happen. And so I'm going to work really, really hard over the rest of this term, and as long as y'all keep me in, to make sure that we're all working together to accomplish that goal and move that needle significantly.
Matthew just talked about the importance of education in this session, funding both for public schools and vouchers. I know that from the beginning of your campaign, you were pro-voucher. Tell us what you think, now that this has passed. We saw $1 billion for vouchers. How transformative is that going to be? How much impact are you going to see in Waco? Is it going to affect our local schools?
Okay, I'm going to back up for just a second and put that a little bit in perspective. So recognize we just passed a $338 billion budget. Texas's budget is $160 billion a year. It's a biennial budget. And the reality is that we're the most successful state really in the world. And if you compare that, just so you understand, California has 9 or 6 more million people than we do, and their budget is 3 times our budget. And so we're successful for lots of reasons, but the $1 billion also has several limitations. So I'm happy to say that when you look at the maximum number of students that could participate, it's 100,000. 100,000 out of 6 million, about 1.3%. When you back off of that and say that we were also able to get a high priority in for special needs and special ed students, and they're going to get a priority in the approval process. Well, they get $30,000 apiece, not $10,000. So you can eat up $1 billion in a hurry. So is it 30,000 students? Is it 50,000 students? It's probably not going to be more than 50 to 60,000 students across 6 million. So less than 1%. If you take that and say the Waco ISD has 14,000 students, and is it 1%? Do we have the capacity here for that? Do we have the company or people out there that are interested in opening new schools for that, to do something like that? Same thing with Midway, I think 11,000 students. So it's an interesting dynamic. I think the reality is it's a test. It is limited to $1 billion, which is totally limited to what the legislature puts into it. Right, and that's got to go through the House. And believe me, I don't know if any of y'all had the pleasure of watching the hours and hours and hours of discussion that we had on the House floor about this, but it is a grinding process to get that through. Not only when it came to the school choice piece, but then when it came to the other pieces.
I wonder on that, what do you think about the final shape of the bill in which the private school students who have vouchers don't have to submit to the same accountability the public schools do, the STAR test, for example?
I think that comes down to competition amongst them, right? That's an interesting equation. We passed a bill in the House to eliminate the STAR test. And go to a more effective testing system and probably a little more fair reporting system back for the schools. And we didn't define it tight enough because we wanted input and we wanted the ability to do such where public schools were involved and more involved. I know the public schools really wanted more focus on the testing and things. For the private schools, the STAR test is not the answer for either, in my opinion.
Would you like to abolish the STAR test?
I would absolutely want to abolish the STAR test. I would have loved to have been able to have done it now. Now, do I not want testing? I do want testing, but I want progression testing. And are you moving the needle or are you not moving the needle? Right? I mean, one of my proudest moments, I actually voted for a Democrat named Harold Dutton, a great member, longtime member, and he put a bill forth in the House and he said something extremely powerful. He put a bill forth that said where we would be providing tutoring money for children in K through 3. And he said, from kindergarten to third grade, is when you learn to read. For the rest of your life is when you read to learn. And that really hit home with me. A lot of Republicans did not vote for that bill. I did. And it did not pass. And it didn't go anywhere in the Senate. And we worked our tails off, and I worked with him to do it, and we actually got that entire program put into the school funding bill, into HB 2, and passed with $400 million into that program to be able to get our kids to above grade level reading, we hope.
So House Bill 2, $8.5 billion is the biggest increase in public school funding in Texas history, as I understand. At the same time, you did a massive tax cut, I guess you could say massive, a very large, substantial cut to property taxes. I wonder what gives here. I mean, eventually, is that going to be sustainable? Is Texas always going to have a surplus? Are we going to be looking at someday having to claw back some of that, either the funding or raise taxes again?
Well, that's a great question. You never know. I mean, if the oil prices drop, we had a lot of our revenue from the oil business and the extraction of oil from the earth. If there have been plenty of times in the last 15 to 20 years where we haven't had those surpluses, and so that's a difficult equation to answer. The growth of Texas is certainly something that we're counting on to be able to do that, because we are growing at, if I believe it's correct, it's 1,500 people a day. It's a major number for a state this size, and so that's going to be part of it. But it's also part of gaining efficiencies and lowering the way you can to try to reduce your cost and do the other things necessary. It's a very tricky equation.
Yeah. I have a long list of questions I want to ask you, but we got to get to our other folks too. But I do want to ask you this: is you won, I think, 69% of the vote in November. What about the other 31? Are those, how do you look at those people? Are they, do you treat, and do you believe that bipartisanship is still possible, or is this a Republican state and you just have to make Republicans happy?
Well, I mean, I think in the end, because we have the majority, when it comes down to certain priorities, it's going to end up being a party line vote. There weren't a whole lot of those just straight party line votes this session. I mean, the beauty of Texas, and very different than Washington, is that we work together. I mean, we are on the floor together every day, all 150 of us in the House floor, and we know each other. We all have each other's cell numbers, and when there's things we're working on, I mean, I got over 100 votes in the House floor on most of my bills, and it's because I know everybody on the floor. There's 88 Republicans, and I promise you we don't get along. So at the end of the day, we represent the people. I believe I represent everybody in this room and everybody that's in this district and Central Texas. I was born and raised here. And so I don't care whether it's, I graduated in public school here. I don't care whether it's schools or mental health or healthcare, Medicaid. We want to help those. I certainly want to help those that need the help, but you can't get it. I don't necessarily want to help people that won't go get it or won't help themselves in the end. But I think that, there's so many aspects. A large percentage of our budget actually goes to helping everybody in the state, and even the governor feels that way. So we do have those conversations a lot.
Well, the people in this audience will have a chance to ask you some questions in a little bit. We'll bring you back up. First, we're going to go to our panel of local officials. So I thank you so much, Pat, for joining me today, and we'll bring you back up in a little while.
Absolutely, thank you.
Thank you so much, JP and Hello, can you hear me? Great. Thank you so much, JB and Representative Curry, for that engaging and thoughtful conversation. Now, before we welcome our panelists up to the stage, we have some fantastic local leaders here in the audience that I'd like to recognize. Thank you so much to MCC President Dr. Janet McCowan for being here, MCC Board Trustee Jonathan Hill, TSTC Provost Beth Wooten, District Attorney Josh Teetons, Midway ISD Board Trustee Rick Tollis, Council members George Chase, Darius Ewing, and Andrea Bearfield, Waco ISD Board Chair Jose Vidania, Waco ISD Board Trustee Arash Abnusi, and our Hispanic Chamber President and CEO, Dr. Mito Diaz Espinosa. Thank you guys so much for being here today. And of course, thank you so much to our panel of local leaders. Thank you so much for coming in to discuss legislative decisions and how they're being felt here in our region. I want to invite to the stage Judge Scott Felton, who has served as McLennan County Judge since 2012. Judge Felton is a lifelong McLennan County resident who retired as the president of Wells Fargo after 30 years and has served on numerous regional boards. Now, if I can welcome you to the stage, Judge Felton. We also have Mayor Jim Holmes, who has served on Waco City Council since 2016 and was elected mayor in 2024. He came to Waco in the 1980s to attend Baylor Law School and stayed to work in financial institutions and serve on our city council. Thank you so much. If you'll come on up. And we're so grateful to be joined by Dr. Tiffany Spicer, who joined the Waco ISD as superintendent in October of 2024 and brings over 20 years of experience as a teacher, principal, and district leader. Dr. Spicer, if you'll welcome us to the stage. Welcome to each of our local leaders, and we will open the floor to audience questions in just a little bit. Don't forget about your QR codes here on the table if you want to submit those questions. And if any technology issues come about, if you will wave one of those note cards that you have in the air, and a volunteer will come collect your question. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea. Well, thanks again to all of you for joining us. I think we have an all-star lineup here today, and really interested to hear what you have to say about the legislative session. And thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules. I understand that Mayor Holmes had to, a rumor was that you had to cancel your bungee jumping appointment for
No,
this.
I'm still doing that in 2 weeks.
Oh, in 2 weeks, okay.
I wouldn't dare cancel that.
Okay, of course not, of course not. I wanted to start with Dr. Spicer, if I may, because as we know, this is a big session for education. On the face of it, it looks like $8.5 billion in public funding for schools is a welcome thing. Walk us through that, though. Are there some hits and misses there?
First of all, I would just say first, thank you for the opportunity to be here and just talk about public education. There are some wins, but it's still not enough, right? And so what I reminded our team about is simply this. 2 years ago, we got nothing. Just reality, we got nothing. This year, we did get something. But some of the things that we're kind of dealing with currently, so a lot of us have deficit budgets going on. But we also have the new law that says this many number of years, you get this much money. So because of our size, we're about 14,000 students, we don't get the same amount that the smaller districts around us receive. And so if you're 3 to 5 years, you'll get a $2,500 increase. If you're over that 5-year limit, you'll get about a $4,000 increase. But that does nothing for my 0 to 2. Right? And if you're in a smaller district around us, outside of myself and Midway, they get $4,000 and $8,000. But even then, if you read the fine print, it's specific to teachers who direct teach, if you will, not my specialty teachers. So we have intervention teachers who might not see kids face-to-face. They might float. You have GT, you have specialty, you have all these different positions. So if you're direct teach, you get that. But usually, if you look at our pay scales, nurses, librarians, they all fall on the teacher scale, used to be. Because they don't qualify as a teacher, they would not get that compensation. So right now, we are having to figure out how to compensate all educators if you're in our space, but not just them, custodians, food service, bus drivers, and the like.
And that comes out of your
We
local
will fund,
tax
yes, we will fund that.
dollars.
They did give a portion to cover some of it, but again, they said everybody but administrators. And even then, our CFO shared with the board last week that the remaining funds is about 0.7%. I've got to give our people more than 0.7% of a raise, right? So we have to figure out what that looks like and sounds like for Waco ISD.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd like to ask the other two of you what you saw as hits and misses in this legislative session. Jim?
Sure, JB, thank you. I'm so happy to be here. And thank you, Texas Tribune and Waco Bridge for sponsoring this. I really appreciate this kind of forum. A lot of friends out here, and it's just great to see everybody here. I'll say that I'll divide the session into 3 groups. I'll say that there were bills that did pass that were wins. I will say there were bills that did not pass that were wins. And I will also discuss bills that did pass that are, I'm not going to call them losses, I'll call them challenges. Challenges for Waco and local government. In the first group, and again, Representative Curry, I appreciate you in all 3 of those categories, frankly. You were very helpful and communicative. But the 3 big ones, I think you already talked about with Curry, with Pat, are the water bill, which is huge for Waco, and the investment of $20 billion. That's serious money, and that's great that we have that direction. I know locally we have a good water plan, but to be able to see that on a statewide basis is great. And also the CTWA, the Central Texas Water Alliance, that Judge Felton was so instrumental in developing, that was also passed, and that'll help kind of create a regional strength for Waco and Bell County and McLennan County together. And then just having a stronger voice for regional water supply. The second thing in bills that passed that were really wins, the behavioral health, and as Pat already mentioned, and JB as well. It's a challenge, and it was really a blow when we saw the DePaul Center close, because super counterintuitive, right? Right when we're having mental health as a focus in the community, we're seeing that turn around, and economically it just wasn't working. So taking care of those people in the margins of our society, very important, and having the state, the county, and the city all work together to try to figure out how to make that work. Super important for mental health, because the system isn't working right now, because as Pat said, the county jail is the residents, and that's not right. Our city police department is sort of the the advisors or the therapists, and that's not right. We need to get professionals involved, and it's going to take resources across city, state, and local. The third one is the Texas Rangers. We got and it's really Company F, the law enforcement portion, got $10 million in funding, and we'll be working with the Rangers advisory group and the $10 million, and the city will be trying to figure out a solution there on some improvements at that deal.
Yeah, tell us about that. Will we be seeing a renovation of the Texas Ranger Museum?
With that $10 million, we're going to work with the Rangers Advisory Board to see how much they can raise. It's going to take all three groups, I think. The $10 million that we're getting from state, the city will gauge how much we can, how much the taxpayers. I'm saying, how much y'all want to put into that deal. We'll figure that out too.
Is it for sure that it would be renovated in its current place? Because I know there was some discussion about maybe moving it downtown at one
JB,
point.
there were like maybe 3 levels. There was good, better, best, and the best would have been like $140 million total relocation. And the funding is just tough right now on that kind of deal with the infrastructure challenges that we have in the city. So we kind of and Senator Birdwell was really influential in this. It helped get maybe the good one, which will probably be an improvement in place with some new exhibits and just livening up. I think we saw with the zoo when we got the penguins in there and some new things. It kind of livened things up, and people, it's about tourism and downtown revitalization. There's a lot of different parts to it. I'm sorry to take up all the time here, but I'm going to get to the middle part of bills that did not pass, and I'll get to you, Scott. Bills that did not pass that were wins. I'll be much more brief. Bills that did not pass that were wins, and we kept a close eye. This is the first time as mayor I've been through the legislature, 6 months or whatever, however you guys work on it full time. But the HB 19 really worried me and city council. It was about, one of the effects would have been to hamper longer-term infrastructure, big projects that we have to have for the city, particularly a growing city like Waco that needs to have a longer-term vision on what we're doing in infrastructure, water, streets, roads, and that would have hampered our ability to get that.
As I understand, that would have prevented you from issuing CO bonds. Is that right?
It would have made it much more difficult.
Yeah.
And the state that Waco is in right now, it's great. Everything's great, but we've got to keep going on infrastructure and roads and streets, and we've got to be able to address particularly bigger projects. We would have eliminated the avenue of doing bigger projects. The second one is, I'll just go to the bills that did pass that create challenges. One of them is, and again, these are good. The first one I'm going to talk about is a business property tax exemption that will create it's good for the businesses. They'll pay $1.7 million less. We just got to figure out how to address that in our budget. $1.7 million would have normally come to the city budget. It won't now. We got to figure out how to cover that hole or cut costs, which we're doing. But I could keep going here.
No, I think that's a good point, and that affects the county too, right? As far as the business property tax exemption. What do you think about that in terms of? I mean, every time you give an exemption to somebody, you make some people happy, and then you make some people mad too, because you're basically shifting the burden of the property tax without really cutting the property tax.
Yeah, it's going to essentially be covered by the other residents and other businesses.
What do you think? I mean, is this a good balance where we've seen so much shifting away from relative pushing of the burden away from residential onto business and rental property? Is this a fair rebalancing of that, or does it go too far?
My model here in the city is the economic development model, where we're trying to bring in new businesses to carry, and out-of-town businesses, preferably in some cases, to carry that tax burden. And I think we're seeing that with graphic packaging and and Amazon and some of these larger businesses that are coming in. They're picking up a bigger share of the tax burden. Our tax value in this city, when I got in council 10 years ago, and when Kyle and I were both on council, the value of the entire city was like $8 billion. It's gone to $24 billion in the last 9 years.
And that's before graphic packaging fully comes.
So, and that's also before all of these exemptions, right? So our net comes down. So we got to be careful about the exemptions. And I like the exemptions. They're basically tax breaks. Yeah. They don't get interpreted or messaged like that often, but they really are. Last thing I want to say before I get off is that, and Pat touched on it, and Dr. Spicer and Scott and Judge Felton and I, really the communication aspect of this has been great. Pat and Scott and Dr. Spicer and I, we would get together every other Monday morning and what's going on, what do you think about this, and just open communication and really tailoring some of these bills. And you knew where Central Texas was coming from, certainly the city and the county and the school. And internally, every Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock, my group at the city, we would get together. Not a great time to have a meeting Friday at 4, but we did get together to talk about bills that affected the city. So I just think the communication, as Pat mentioned earlier, has just been fantastic, and I think we're having good results.
Thanks, Jim. And Judge, I wanted to ask you to follow up on that, what Jim mentioned about the Central Texas Water Alliance. Am I saying that right? So it's essentially a water authority that has the ability to, they have eminent domain authority, so they can condemn land if they need to, and bonding authority, so they could actually use revenue bonds to pay for infrastructure. And it doesn't specify how that would be used, but I've heard you talking some about how you're looking at going in with Bell County on this. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, and thanks so much for the invitation. A lot of the opening comments have been pretty much laid out what we're going to be talking about, I think, because it was right on my list as well. Just as a side note, many of you probably do not know, but I hired Mr. Holmes off the farm about 3 decades ago and taught him as much as I could in banking and finance, but brevity was not one of them.
You still can't shut me up, Scott, after 40 years.
And filibuster is only for loan committee, so we don't get the hard questions, and that's kind of what I'm doing right now, as a matter of fact.
We'll wait all day if we need to.
Yeah, when I first became county judge, former city manager Wiley Stem and Mayor Malcolm Duncan came to me and asked that I head up the Central Texas Water Alliance, the McLennan County Water Authority. What do we call it? McLennan County Water Resource. And you can tell we hadn't had a meeting in a while. But in that, we were working on numerous issues around the county, knowing that water is one of our limiting factors for growth and economic development. And immediately, we're challenged with an issue where EPA lowered the standards in a negative way of how much arsenic you could have in the water. So Eastern McLennan County had an issue there that we had to solve that wasn't readily available to us. But what it amounted to is we need to bring treated water in and mix it with the groundwater.
Treated water from Lake Waco through City of Waco.
Yeah. Right. And I think there's only 3 treatment plants in McLennan County, 2 small ones, Robinson and Mart, and then City of Waco has the large one that's really the key factor on everything we're doing with water. So the city has done a great job over the last 50 years or more in predicting what kind of water needs for our community needed to be. And through all the planning and all, raised the level of the lake 7 feet, which gave a tremendous amount of water and also priority rights on the Brazos River. Also, I think another key thing that's changed is the new head of the Brazos River Authority is David Collinsworth, who's a local guy and is really focused in on what we need here in our community. With all that to be said, and also we have the Southern Trinity Groundwater District that has a limiting time left on it, that for us to really be prepared for decades to come was bring water from outside source. And so through help with County Judge David Blackburn from Bell County, he had asked his Senator Pete Flores to introduce a bill that would allow the Central Texas Water Alliance. And Brad Buckley, state representative in the House, helped carry that. And then Pat Curry joined in with them to do this. What it would amount to is bringing water where it's abundant from far east Texas and pipe it in to Central Texas that would give us new water over and above what we already have. They would give us assurance of adequate water for years to come. And we've got a long way to go. The legislation just passed, as you mentioned, gives us the right to create an authority that can have the power of eminent domain to get the water line over here, and also to be able to take out debt, which we would probably go to the Water Development Board and more than likely revenue bonds where they weren't ad valorem tax paying for it. It would be the water users paying for it. And there's a lot of buy-in.
If I can ask, would any of that money from that was mentioned in the water legislation this year, could any of that be used for what you're doing?
Well, possibly it could, and plus, one of the big focuses for the legislature was water, and they put a lot of effort and money into it and planning as well. But yes, that's possible for sure, and then also help support and fund the Water Development Board to have plenty of money to be able to issue out in bonds. So
both you and both McLennan and Bell County and possibly Lampasas County?
Well, so
could
there will
develop.
be some surrounding counties that Coryell County, and the reason why those counties are involved is because of Fort Cavazos or Fort Hood. And they immediately raised their hand and said, we would like to have a sustainable source of water in case of emergencies. We cannot afford not to have water.
And that would come from east of here, from the Carrizo-Wilcox Aquifer, as I understand?
Yes.
Where a lot of cities, including Georgetown and Bryan College Station, are trying to tap that water.
Right. In fact, we thought we'd have more pushback in the legislative process from those competitors, I guess you'd call them, because we compete on economic development, and that's a limiting factor for them as well.
Mm. But you see that that's reasonably, you would have reasonable success in tapping into that aquifer and piping that water to McLennan
I
and Bell
do.
County.
It'll be very expensive and it'll take some time.
Yeah.
But it'll be an investment.
Yeah. I also wanted, before we run out of time, to come back to Dr. Spicer, because we heard from Representative Curry about the voucher program. Do you agree when he kind of minimizes, how the voucher program would affect public schools because 100,000 people at most could get it? Do you agree with that? I mean, do you think that education savings accounts will have a direct impact on Waco ISD?
My hope is that it doesn't. That's the best I can say is I hope that it doesn't. Parents have choice, and we hope they choose us. And one of the things I've learned since I've gotten here, that a lot of our families still choose us. So I think we're in a good spot in that regard. However, over time, I think over the last 10 years, and they can correct me if I'm wrong, but we have seen a decline in enrollment, right? But it hasn't been substantial to where it's like, oh my gosh, we're losing thousands upon thousands of students at a time. So I think that if we continue to make sure that we do our part to say, hey, this is why you should come to Waco ISD, this is what we offer, these are the pathways we have all the programs that everybody wants, right? Make sure you come to our schools. So we have to become almost like a private and a charter and make sure we're selling all the great things that are happening in public school.
If we continue along this road of vouchers, do you think it's going to create sort of a competition for students?
It already has.
Yeah.
It already has.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I think that all of us, I'll say majority of us, I think if my other superintendents were in this space with me, I think we'd all agree. The only thing that we were concerned about with vouchers, we knew that was going to be a go because we saw what happened last session. We just wanted the playing field to be fair. And what I mean by that is if you want to do STAR, let's do STAR. If you want to do a beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year, let's do it. Whatever it is, let us know the game so we can be competitive with them. Right now, if you go to charter and private, there's no accountability whatsoever. And the rules for our accountability, we have it, yes, but they keep changing. So we're just like, whatever you do for one, do for all. We're good. But let us know what we're going to do. So that's kind of the rub right now with vouchers. But again, it is what it is. They're here. We're going to make sure we fight to keep our students and my charter friends and we all talk, y'all. So they know that, I want to make sure we keep our babies with us, and I want our midway kiddos to stay there. We want our kids to stay in public schools because we do believe we're doing right by our families, by our kiddos, by our communities, and we're trying to change generations.
We also heard about how the legislature is trying to require all teachers to be certified within, 3 years or something like that?
Yes.
Waco ISD has seen the number of uncertified teachers go up quite a bit since the pandemic.
Correct.
Is this doable? Can you get all these people certified in that window?
I'm not sure that we can, and the reason I say that, so we do partner with a lot of our higher ed, so your Baylor, your Texas Tech, your Tarleton, you name them, we have partnerships with a lot of them. Their programs are even smaller, which means that people are not going into public education. If they're not going into the programs or they're that way or through alt-cert, they're not going to come to us. So right now we do have people who have their first career and then decide to come into public ed. So the thing that I think people don't think about, I'm not sure if our legislators think about this too, is if I have a guy who has a welding company and he has 20 years experience, I need him to teach. He has the credentials. I'm not going to say, hey, go take this alt test to go be a welder for me as a teacher. He doesn't need it. He has the experience. So where does that group come in? Because you have that. If I have somebody teaching architecture, if I have somebody teaching, I don't know, pick a career, that they're doing the work already, that counts for certification because you're teaching us life skills and these kids can take that and to push it back into their real lives. And so I think that's something that we're not talking about as much. But again, we're going to have to try to figure out a way to get our people certified. What people also don't talk about is if you look at TEA and the tests that people take to get certified, they've made it extensively harder. From the teacher to the principal to the superintendent, the test is so much harder and it's so much cumbersome, almost like you're going to go to get a doctorate degree, or a master's degree. So it's just like, it's not the same game. So I think it's going to make a challenge for all of us in the system.
Yeah. Speaking of education, any of you might be interested in this, but I saw that Texas State Technical College is going to be on the ballot in November. There's a constitutional amendment that, as I understand it, would give TSTC, the system that's based in Waco, an endowment of about $850 million. And that would allow them to build buildings and on their own time instead of having to go to the legislature every time they want to do that. Judge, I know that you've been involved in economic development and workforce development for a long time. What kind of impact would you see in Waco if this passes?
Well, we have TSTC is already creating a tremendous impact in our community and being able to train a skilled workforce, which, the limiting factors to growth many times, especially industrial growth, is water and a skilled workforce. On top of that, McLennan Community College is a very much of a participant in that area. Any help we can give these colleges to produce more, and especially produce it at a reasonable return for the students. And the other thing that really is important is job placement. Helping them get that job is always important. So I support any legislation or efforts to shore up these colleges that provide that skilled workforce that we need.
Just as kind of a final question, when Pat Curry or whoever goes back to the legislature in the next session, as well as Angelia Orr and Brian Birdwell, our state senator, what do you hope that they'll keep in mind as far as your institution, its needs, and its future needs going into the next 10 years? Just real quick so we can get to our questions.
One thing I would just ask them to do, and I do this with my staff, take a chair, put it in the middle, think of a student. It can be your child, it can be your niece, your nephew. If the decision is right for that child, then you made a good choice. If it's not good for the child, take yourself out of it and make the right decision.
I'll just say that a lot of legislation in Austin seems to be targeted at, or some of it's anti-city, but it's targeted at Dallas and Houston and Austin, the bigger cities. I will just ask, and Pat knows this, that the smaller cities like us that are trying to grow smart growth, and we need the tools that are available to us to make sure that we're not jumbled in with the Austins and Dallases and the San Antonios and the Houstons of the world and their particular challenges and their capping that they're getting. And I think we've got great communication there already.
Don't get in our way.
No, he's like,
Do as little as possible.
Yes. Well, there was many bills filed and many failed. There's a few questions still not answered out there. I know that we've got someone that we can talk to that understands where we are, a farmer business person himself, like us, and we know that we've got good talent and good elected officials in this community, in my opinion. And that might sound biased, but just don't get in our way. That's it.
Well, thanks again to all of you for taking the time to be here. And we are going to bring up Pat Curry here again, and I'm going to give him my chair. And we'll also bring up Matthew Watkins from the editor-in-chief of the Texas Tribune. And this will be a time to take your questions. We've got questions for both the texts and from cards, and I'll be getting those for just a minute. So we're going to have a little transition time here, and we'll be right with you.
Thanks, JB.
Thank you. I guess I don't need this, so I will give that. And while we're reorganizing here, if you look in the back, there is Project VEER. An organization is here to register people to vote. So always good to get the word out about that. Let me make sure I have it. Great. Okay, well, let's get started here. And some of these are directed toward individuals and some to the whole group. Mary asked of Representative Curry, McLennan County and the city of Waco are split by two state representative districts, 56 and 13. What future priorities do you see for yourself and for District 13 Rep. Angela Orr in bettering the lives of all Wacoans and all McLennan County?
Well, I mean, I think I answered that a little earlier just from the standpoint, I think this mental health issue is a major issue. I think doing more to support our school districts as well and listening to the needs that we have and trying to move the needle on that. As one of 150, it's hard to move that needle, you know, and you have so many people that are legislators, and we've talked about this, that are self-proclaimed education experts just because they went to public school, and they don't really talk to their educators as well as they should and try to come up with it. But I will say this, I mean, I'm not going to speak for Representative Orr. She has the eastern kind of third of the county, if you will. I kind of try to cover the entire area and work as much as I can. And I will say that I look at the issues, and I think we need to continue to look at the issues as not just red or blue issues, but red, white, and blue issues. And I think that goes to all of us up here. We all feel the same way about that.
A follow-up for you, Pat. And this is we had a couple of questions about this. One, this is regarding the bill that you filed that would have made school board elections partisan. It didn't make it out of committee. So what the first one is, let's see here. Cheryl says that proposed House Bill 1197, which did not pass, but would have required that school boards be partisan. She wants to know why you filed that bill. Michael also asked for the whole panel, do you agree with Mr. Curry that local ISD races should be partisan? We'll start with Pat and then move to others.
Yeah, and I'll just quickly say that, again, some of the bills that you file are to start a conversation. And, one of the issues, the countering issues that's constant at the state level is it seems like we want to try to run everything locally from the state and take away the local power of the local elected officials. And okay, well, if that's the case, then the more you do that, the less effective we are. And so what's your issue with them? And if your issue is that the bond elections need to be in March or November or not May, if your issue is that you want partisan elections for school boards and city council or whatever, or your issue is you want the school boards to be elected in November, then let's get that conversation going. Unfortunately, we didn't even get a hearing on it. I mean, again, I'm the first one to say that most importantly, let's get people out to talk about that, and you can't do it unless you can raise the subject and bring people into Austin to the committees, and whether it's a long meeting or not. So there's a lot of things that I try to do just to get the conversation going.
I wonder if we have any thoughts from Dr. Spicer or
You do.
Jim Holmes, since you're.
You want to go first?
Don't fight over the microphone, please.
Go ahead.
So we've already talked about this face to face. I kind of told them where I stood at the very beginning. I'm in total disagreement. And the reason is because I'm not trying to make school about politics. And he knows, we kind of talk very frankly. When he calls or I call, it's like, you want to know the truth? Let me tell you, right? But the biggest thing is this. That's not what our kids are there for. That's not what our board is there for. Our board is there to govern and to make sure that we're doing everything possible for our babies. We're there to be a voice for them, advocate for them, and make sure they have every opportunity and access. And in my mind, and I tried to kind of think through, like, let me understand, let me find a reason why it's good. I can't find one. And so I believe strongly that we leave it alone. Let us go out. Let us vote for the people that we want. It does not matter if they're blue or red. If they want to serve in a role as a board member to support our students, I'm all for it.
Yeah, I'll clap for that one too. Yeah, I'll echo Dr. Spicer on that. And I'm an investment banker, so I get the return on investment concept of we got to do better in our May elections. We don't have enough people showing up, and I think that's part of the reason that say, well, we need more people coming to the polls in November. And the other one is just the economics of holding the election and finding all that. But I am firmly in favor of keeping a separate election for local government. And the nonpartisan nature of it is what makes it so attractive to me, because I've got a advisory team that covers the entire city and left and right and middle, and I call on all those people for advice, and they freely give me advice too, which I take with much pleasure and thankfulness. So yeah, it introduces a little bit of politics into it that don't seem to maybe work on a street to street, neighborhood to neighborhood level.
Can I move on to the next question, or do we have any other thoughts there?
Well, I don't think it should be partisan, and I'd never file a bill to start a conversation.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
Fair enough. Moving on. This is an interesting question I hadn't thought about. To the panel, anybody on the panel, what is our city and county doing to limit large corporations like Meta and other AI companies and data centers from continuing to develop with ongoing water supply concerns? These data centers have immense water supply needs, and addressing this by limiting energy supply during emergencies is not enough. Any thoughts on that?
Well, there's always the, you want to grow your tax base, there's no question about that, but there are things that you want to check the box on, and the amount of resources they use is one of those. From what I understand, that some depends on how they're designed and all have a different type of water use systems, but I don't know enough about that to know, but I know that those are critical things. We, like, there's no secret about this, that data centers are calling every city up and down I-35 and over Houston, Dallas routes as well. And so those questions are coming up now. The other thing is not just water, but also the amount of power they use. So as mentioned before, there's a lot of focus being on creating additional power to the grid. Some of the requirements for these larger data centers is that they generate their own power. And so that means putting in simple cycle plants or small modular nuclear reactors, which is going to be the new source of power, I think, in the near future. And there's going to be a lot of discussion, even in this community here, about that. And so it is a concern, but as we learn more about it, and if we do make any deals like that, that'll be in full consideration how much resources they use.
JB, I'll echo Judge on that. The infrastructure needs is what, I mean, it is a big old pile of money from a tax base, but when you look at the infrastructure support that we need to put in and the taxpayers need to put in to support that, as well as the practical aspects of the question are there of how much water are they going to use, how much of our resources do we already have committed, that'll be the equation. We are getting a lot of interest, as a judge mentioned, for that kind of data center operation.
Great. So we'd had somebody wanted to ask Pat Curry about parks. So Pat, anybody who Googles you will find out that you filed a bill to abolish the Texas Parks and Wildlife, which I believe you later withdrew. Tim wants to know, Representative Curry, please explain why you stood up to the billionaires that control the Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. I'm not sure what to make of that question, but I think it's worth talking about. Why? I'll add this to it: is why did you file that bill, and what is your thinking on Texas Parks and Wildlife and the future of parks in Texas and Central Texas?
Well, this will be fun, and I'm going to, because you're going to see me get very animated about a subject. I do not appreciate agency overreach. I don't appreciate government overreach. I don't want appointed commissioners being able to create law with their rules. And Parks and Wildlife had issues going on. I started working with them last summer. We have several constituents that are involved in this matter. I speak for our constituents. By the way, I filed a lot of bills for our constituents. I passed several. I will say I learned a lot in this process, but I spent a lot of time working with them, with that agency in particular, to say, hey, if you want to change the law, bring it to us. Let's work with you and change the law, but you're not going to run over small business rights and kill a whole industry on false claims, and you're not going to take over property owner rights with your rules. And I think that the legislature's job is to hold them accountable as agencies. And when they're appointed by the governor and they get to run wild with what they're doing, and especially in a few of those, they are sometimes can be out of control, need to be held in check. They did not appreciate that.
So do you still want to abolish Texas
No,
Parks
and the freshman mistake, go ahead and I'll admit it, a couple freshman mistakes, but that was certainly one of them. The title of that bill sucked. The fact is, it really had nothing to do, it was not abolishing Parks and Wildlife. To clarify that, it really was taking the parts and pieces and moving them to different areas of leadership in the state where they were elected officials that could be held accountable at the polls for making bad decisions and doing things they shouldn't be doing. And so consequently, that was a misnomer. It came through the Ledge Council, and I certainly regret that, believe me. But at the end of the day, we were not going to cut any jobs. It was not going to cut any services. We're 100% for parks. I'm a hunter. I'm a fisherman. I'm all about it. I love the game wardens. I actually think they do a great job. I know a lot of them. So it really had nothing to do with that. But nobody reads the bill. They just read the headline. Now, the good news is Parks and Wildlife read the headline and the bill. They did not like it. And so they decided to sick some of their people on me publicly, but we ended up working things out. We had a few meetings and are still meeting, and in the interim, I'll spend a lot of time with them and some other agencies. The intended consequence of that bill filing and the heartache that it took, and I will tell you, unfortunately for my wife and family, there were several death threats over that. So for a state legislator making $600 a month, that's a lot to be dealing with credible death threats. That's not very fun. So I will tell you that the intended consequence was, though, the other agencies are paying a lot of attention to that bill. And the fact that I'm certainly willing to stand up to them. And then on the DOJ committee, which I'm on, which Texas DOJ is totally different than federal DOJ, but we're holding them accountable. We're making sure they're transparent and they know it. So feel glad that you have somebody that's willing to stand up to these people and stand firm for us and make sure that the law is followed.
Well, thank you so much. We have a lot of other questions, and I really appreciate those of you who sent in questions. But unfortunately, we're at time. So I want to thank again Representative Pat Curry, Waco ISD Superintendent Tiffany Spicer, Mayor Jim Holmes, County Judge Scott Felton, and Texas Tribune Editor-in-Chief Matthew Watkins. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Did they file off now? They should file off now. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you so much, JB, and thank you to each of our participants. On behalf of our entire team, thank you for being a part of today's event. Now, we hope that today is just the beginning. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter yet, if you guys will pull out your phones and head to wacobridge.org, if you go to our homepage, there's a section to put your email address. That will take you directly to the newsletters, and we read each and every response to those newsletters. So we would love for you to contact us directly by replying to each of the newsletters that JB and his team are sending out. It's free, it's local, and it's how we can stay in touch with our community members. Now, there's so much more to come, from strong community photojournalism to explanatory guides for your major life moments to our Friday Forum program with KWBU. If you guys respond to these newsletters, please share what you would like to see from the Waco Bridge. We are reading and monitoring each and every one of those responses. And we had so many great questions today. I wish that we could have gotten through all of them. We are going to keep all of those in account as we create our future coverage. And if you had some questions that weren't answered or weren't asked today, if you guys would respond to our newsletter, ask those questions, reach out to us on Facebook, reach out to us on Instagram. We want this to be a conversation. Again, everything that we publish is free to access. There's no paywall. Unfortunately, it is not free to produce. We have a fantastic team here. It takes time, care, and dedication for each of our community members to be represented through our journalism. If you believe this work is important, we invite you to support it. Please feel free to contact me. Feel free to contact our team members. Every contribution helps us keep this vital coverage going, and it helps shape Waco. It helps make sure that each voice is pouring into our coverage. If you head to wacobridge.org, there's also a tab to support us. Thank you so much to everyone who has already supported in strengthening local journalism in our community. And watch your inbox this week for a follow-up from our editor-in-chief, JB Smith, including highlights from today's conversation and his vision for the Waco Bridge. You are helping lay the foundation for a more informed and more connected Waco by being a part of our work. And before we close, I want to give another sincere thank you to our sponsors: First Title Company of Waco, Texas State Technical College, Heart of Texas Goodwill Industries, and our sponsors and gracious hosts, McLennan Community College, who welcomed us into this space for our first event. Thank you so much. And again, we are also deeply grateful to our founding funders, the Cooper Foundation, the Rappaport Foundation, and the Waco Foundation, whose early belief in this vision made the Waco Bridge possible for our community. Thank you all again for being here. We're honored to serve Waco, and we hope that this is the first of many more conversations that we'll have together through events, through social media, through our coverage. So please feel free to connect with our team, and we look forward to connecting with you. Thank you.